Role of workforce strategy in scaling entrepreneurial marketing efforts. We have our motivational speaker here, Ron Thomas, Managing Director with Strategy Focus Group. So over to you, Ron. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you for this opportunity to talk through what I consider is workforce strategies. So I know the conference is based on marketing, and you are visionaries in what you do in building out a plan for the organization to reach their strategic goals. So my conversation to you this afternoon is going to be built around the fit of the future, skills, capabilities, because all of those things are important. So my name is Ron Thomas. I'm based here in Dubai. I've been here maybe 9 years. Possibly, maybe a little more. My background is I started in HR close to 20 years ago. And I've worked for Xerox, I've worked for IBM, and I worked for Martha Stewart, which you've probably heard of. And I was the head of HR for Martha Stewart, and I started there as a trainer, and I ended up 9 years later as the head of HR. I went to Xerox and I managed one of their consulting practices. And then I got recruited to move to Saudi Arabia. I lived there for a little over a year as the Chief Human Resource and Administrative Officer. The title was so long we couldn't get it on a business card, but that's okay. So I say that to say I did that for a while, and then I came to Dubai as the CEO for Great Place to Work here in Dubai. And I left that role a little over a year later, and I ended up as the founder of Strategy Focus Group, and we concentrate on strategy. So when I talk to you about the fit for your organization, as I said, I gave you accolades because you're the strategy people. In other words, you're designing strategies for the product. How do we get from point A to point B? How do you close that gap? But my discussion is going to be around people, because people are going to drive that. Skills and capabilities are going to drive that. A lot of discussions today is about AI and the implications of AI in the future-driven workforce, but it comes back to skills, where we have the skills to do that. So what I want you to think about is that the role that you're designing, or the strategy that you're designing, what skills are you looking for? What capabilities are you looking for? Can you source the talent? You're all visionaries. I'm going to say that you're all visionaries, but what about the underpinnings or the foundation of that department? Who am I going to source to come and help me with this project? Who am I going to reach out for because I have a deficit in this particular skill set, and I need to get a more higher level kind of digital approach, AI approach. When you look at the layoffs that's happened in tech, the key component of that, the key thread of that, comes back to AI skills and capabilities. And I read one article that said the skills of an engineer, 3 to 4 to 5, well, I'm going to say years back, those skills need to be upskilled, because there's the AI component there. So when you look at these companies making these layoffs, skills aren't there. And how do I design the skills for a future state of my organization? And as marketing people, you're the key role in driving revenue, because you're coming up with a strategy. How do we reach the customer? How do we reach a different geographical region? All of these kind of approaches comes from everyone in this room. But the key to that, do we have the skills and capabilities inside of our function of marketing? And this is why it's important, because otherwise what will happen is that you will end up with, you're doing all the heavy lifting and you don't have the strategic people there to guide it from high level. Skills and capabilities, strategic focus. Where is your industry that you're working in? Where is it headed? And if you think of the current state and you think of the future state of the industry, what's the gap that I'm going to need to cover as it relates to skills? And if you looked at the skills of your team, you may realize there's some deficits there. This is all I'm going to say as it relates to that, but there's some deficits there. How do I think in terms of, as I'm building out this strategy, will I have the skills and capabilities to design this new marketing concept? Because that's what marketing does. What I do is I come in an organization, I kind of give you the big picture and work through from that vantage point. So I say that to pull you back from the marketing strategies and look under the hood. And looking under the hood means that I have capable people in that weekly meeting or that monthly meeting that can help me do some lifting because they have the skills that's going to get me to whatever that deficit is. So we think of from to, which I always use, current state, future state. How do we build a bridge of capabilities from marketing to digital marketing? Digital marketing wasn't even around 5 years ago. It was marketing. So now it's digital marketing. That's a different skill set. That means a different level of people with skills inside of that particular function. Because otherwise, what we're going to have happen, I'm going to click this now. And I'm going to hope this works. Skills. Which one is your department? We're amongst friends. We're amongst friends. We can share. Which one is your department? This department, they're saying all the right things, but you have a certain sector of that department moving one way and another section moving a different way. How do we coalesce and get everyone on the same page? How do we paint the big picture? Which team is yours? It's called psychological safety, and I say, team, we're the team on the bottom. I did a leadership development project I do a lot of work with Brands for Less. And we talked about this, and we said, big picture, huge investment from U.S. How are we going to get everyone from here to here? You have to understand what I need here and the skills I need here to get to here. And this is what my presentation is going to be about. Because you could go to the big meeting, and you can share all the strategy and all the stuff. If you don't have the workforce aligned to make this happen, you may not be invited back. And this is why every project, the company you work for, you've got to nail it. And nailing it means I have to understand the workforce dynamics. I have to understand the skills and capabilities that I need for future state. So it says here, which team is yours? I saw some smiles in the face. I saw looks on the faces that I'm not going to ask you to respond to that, but I saw that. It's called reading the room. Is it based on a project, or is it based on the overall thrust of the team? Someone said? Okay. And then it says, is it based on the overall climate? What does that mean? Anyone have any thoughts as to what that means? Overall climate of the team, of the organization climate. Here's what CONFEX said. 70%, I want you to let that sink in. 70% of the effectiveness of any team comes from the leader of that team. If you're at the top of the pyramid, you drive it. You're in charge of that. So if your team is not performing, you're in charge. What do you do? What skills do I need? 70% comes from the leader of that team. Think of a pyramid. 70% of the guidance of that team comes from the leader of that team. Are you engaging the team? Are you creating psychological safety, which is a term that's used a lot, but what that means is that, are you creating an environment that people can share? I'm having a tough time. I don't understand this skill. Can you help me? Can you get me a course on this? They may not say that because they were hired and they were supposed to know all of this. It's okay. So if you look at team performance, if you look at org performance, who's the top of the pyramid? The truth starts with honesty. Do we have honesty in your teams? I won't tell you the faces I saw when I showed this video, but I saw some faces that I said, they get it. They understand what the bottom is. And in organizations today, you have a lot of the bottom photo, a lot of the photos on the bottom. That's okay. Recognize it, and how do I build beyond that? Workforce strategies. This is why this is important. I speak at a lot of conferences, and the conferences that I really love speaking to are the CEO conferences. Big shots, and they're giving all the big vision and all the things. And I sit there and I look and I say, I can't wait till I get up tomorrow or later this afternoon, because I'm going to talk about what I'm talking about is that if you don't have, you're saying, CEOs are saying, we're here, and I'm saying, maybe, just maybe, you may be here. Executive team. You're the marketing component of that team. And this is how these things work. So here's the thought. Whatever your strategy is, what is your people strategy to make this happen? You've probably never seen this slide before, because this is kind of an HR, human capital, and all the new terms they're talking about today. But what is your people strategy for making this happen? Skills, capabilities, and all these kinds of, how are you going to make this work? Do I have the skills? We just landed this big client. Or our organization, we just came out of the meeting, CEO meeting, and they talked about all these big, how are you going to build the success story for that? You're going to build a success story. It has to start through the people side. Do you have the skills, capabilities to make this work? You can't not, I don't know whether that's perfect English, you can't not think about that. Think about your team. Are there people on your team that may need upskilling, or the skills are not there? You could have landed a big contract. You could be content provider. You can be in whatever it is. Do we have the skills and capabilities to drive that? So here's a thought. So at some point in time, when you're going to that big room and you're talking all the business strategy, the people side is here. Take out the word human resources and go back to people strategy. Do I have the skills and capability to make this happen? I just got up and I gave a dynamic presentation. Everybody's, can we? Sometimes you'll have that imposter syndrome. Can I make this work? Do I have the skills and capabilities to make this work? Because everyone is going to come back into that room and is going to give their presentation, and their presentation is going to be based on marketing strategy, financial strategy, all of this, but the underpinning in each one of these, do I have the skills and capabilities to make it happen? So you can talk about the strategy and all these kind of things, but it always comes back to people. Because the people side says that we have to build a bridge with capabilities to get from current state to future state. I say from too. From is where we are today. You speak to your leadership team and you say to, we got to hit here. So what is the people strategy? I use the term workforce architect, strategic workforce planning, change management, strategic talent acquisition. How are we going to build out all of this? Learning and development, where the skills are going to come from. I would always tell people whenever I travel, which I do almost every week, I said, what do you do? I said, I'm a workforce architect. So branding says, I do that because I'm selling the brand of capabilities. Branding. I know that when I say that, they're going to say, well, what is a workforce architect? Perfect opportunity, sell mode, I can sell you the strategy behind that. We build workforce strategies based on org strategies. That's what we do. Wow, how was that done? Sell, 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 brand, brand, brand. You're branding people, you know that. I'm not a marketing person, but I do know that. Current state to future state. That could be business model changes, that could be M&A, that could be location strategy, that could be business disruption. What are you doing? And I want to be sitting someplace in there because whatever you decide that looks like, I've got to design it for the people side, the same as you do for the marketing side. We're strategic people. Strategic mindsets say we look and we're trying to figure out how do I build the bridge across to the other side. Understanding corporate strategy, how important it is. So here's a thought. If you think of your marketing department, you could be a marketing department of 1 or 2 or 3. Do they understand how strategy cascades from here to here to here? Term is called strategy cascade, and all that means is that you take one piece of strategy. What does each department, I'm going to go back to a slide here. What is the financial strategy for from to? What is the marketing strategy for from to? Technology, all of these will require in that big room a bridge to get across. That's it. So what that means is that we have to understand what corporate strategy is. It's extremely important. Because you design marketing solutions, we design people solutions, finance designs, financial solutions, marketing designs, marketing solutions, and it goes on, every function. AI solutions, what is that going to look like? Everybody's talking about AI. And I'm like, give it a rest. You have to get there. What are the skills of marketing? What are the skills for the technology people? I was in Pakistan 2 weeks back, and I spoke with a dean of a university. And a lot of the engineering degrees, they're kind of sunsetting. Because the skills going forward are not based on the new thrust of AI. How are we going to build it out? Civil engineering, they said we're going to get rid of that program. Petroleum engineering is kind of a dying breed somewhat because it's now about EV. So when you think of the skills that's needed as industry transforms, and one of the things I tell people, I said, understand the industry before you go into anything. Where's the industry headed? Where are we on the scale to get here? And then I figure out what skills I need to make this happen. Because I can give you the best presentation ever, but if I haven't thought of the underpinnings of that, I don't know how we're going to get from one to the other. This is an example here of what I call a strategy cascade. This was a bank. If you notice, in the U.S. today, the banks on the corner, they're not doing that anymore. They're closing the branches. Why? Because you can do everything from your phone. So if that's the case, marketing is designing a mobile strategy or whatever it is, but where are we going to get the digital marketers to understand that if we've been branch marketing and now we're going to digital market, totally different. Can I transform some of those people over? Maybe, maybe not. But we have to think of what's the talent acquisition strategy. So here's what we think about when you think of strategy cascade. I showed you the pizza pie. What does each slice of that have to do to connect here? We talked to marketing, we talked to all of these others. What is the role that we're going to play to execute on the strategy? Strategy cascade. So it's a whole lot more than just saying, we're going to be here in 3 to 5 years. Okay, so who builds the underpinning of the foundation through people to make this happen? It just doesn't happen. Someone has to be inside to drive that. What does each department have to do to support the strategy? And what is the people strategy for finance? What is the people strategy for marketing? Marketing, you may need a different skill set. You may need to hire social marketers. Because this whole thing of social marketing, it used to be marketing. Now it's social. What does that mean? If someone asks you, what is the difference between marketing? It says digital marketing, advertising, and technology. Well, before it could have been marketing. What's the difference between the two? There's a different skill set. And we have to be aware of that, because if we're presenting to the big room, we have to explain to the big room what this looks like. Because trust me, if your C-suite DNA is older, they're not understanding the social side. What is TikTok? I don't want to be on TikTok. That's not for us. We are a bank. Well, the customers you're trying to get could be on TikTok. Could we create something cool? The talent we're trying to hire could be on TikTok, so we go to where the talent is. How do we convince I always say the big room, as to, we have to rethink all of this. It's not just the customer base. It works from two sides. There's an external customer, and then there's an internal customer. Internal customer is what we have, and what is the from to on that. What does a SWOT analysis look like inside of an organization? How many of you have ever seen your organization SWOT? Okay, one out of, I don't want to do the calculation or not. This is what a SWOT does. A SWOT tells you, here's what we looked out, the visionaries, in quotes. Here's where we are. Here's where we need to be. But we got to navigate through all of this to get to here. This is important for strategy. This is important for every department, but it's more important for marketing. Are we marketing capable for moving to digital? Who are our competitors? Who are we competing against? If we understood the industry, we'll realize that there's certain leaders. What are they doing different than what we're doing? You've got to analyze that. It means more than coming up with a presentation and coming up on the screen and you talk through it, because there's a lot of work that needs to be understood from the other side. So SWOT analysis is important. And I always tell people, one of the best things you can do inside of any organization, get a copy of the SWOT. Get a copy of the SWOT and understand, where are we headed as an industry? What is this industry going to look like in 5 years? Because that gap is, we have to build a bridge to make sure that happens. Every department will own a piece of that. So every department should understand exactly where we are as it relates to this. And this is why all of this is important. So success is 20% strategy, but it's 80% mindset. Mindset means the people that you're going to be developing to drive future state. Do they understand what here? Industry is headed here. Here's where we go from here to here to here. Do they understand that? And I need when I talk to finance people, when I talk to technology people, I said, do your work, but how's your work connected to this? If you understand this, there's a higher level of penetration to get to the so-called future state. Everybody talks strategy, big talk. I gave a presentation in Pakistan a few weeks back, and the majority of the participants were CEOs, and they're getting up and they're giving their big presentations, high level, and going through all of this kind of talk, and sitting there, something's missing. So I said, when my presentation comes up tomorrow, I got to bring in some innocence to this presentation. Let me talk about, I can understand this. What is the skills and capabilities inside of the organization? Because if I don't have that, I'm not going to make it. And when I got up, I talked through that. I said, everybody talked big talk, but nobody talked about skills and capabilities of the you can't get from to, you can't get across the bridge and compete until you have the skills and capabilities to get me to the other side. Can't be done. If you don't spend some time thinking through that, you're in the cloud. And lots of times in senior leadership today, they are in the cloud. So how do we bring clarity to that? Part of our presentation should cover capabilities and how are we going to move from here to here. One goal looks like this. What is the people component? What do we have internally? What is the deficit or gap? And we have to build this out together. So it says HR goal for criteria for success. It means the organization's goal for criteria and success. 1, 2, 3. Every strategic thrust has to be looked at through the context of vision of people. And that means, how do we get to the other side? I read an interesting, that wasn't my slides. I read an interesting book a while back, and it was called, and it was talking about strategic roles. And here's what a key message that I took away from that. Every piece of strategy is a bus. So you've got 3 pieces of strategy. Who's driving the bus for each one? Marketing, you could be driving the bus from the marketing effort. Finance could be driving the bus for that effort. Technology, it just goes on and on. Who's driving the bus? Who's sitting on the bus? Do I have the capability of sitting on the bus that's going to allow me to get to future state, which means the other side? So I know when we talk about marketing, we kind of go high level, but I need you to tamp it down a bit. Think about your team. Who do we have the skills and capabilities inside of your team? And then once we develop this so-called people strategy, how do we talk to the leaders in the room to get them to understand that there's some other components to that, which is what I did in Pakistan the other week. I said, let's just take a step back and let me walk you through my way of looking at this from a totally different context. I understand strategy, I understand the from to, I understand the underpinnings, because I tend to follow every industry for the most part. But here's how this may look. And here's what some things that we may think about, as a result of moving here. Change comes from a technical side, and it comes from a people side. Lots of times we just concentrate on the technical side. But people are here, and people may feel that maybe I'm going to get laid off. How can I get upskilled? I don't have the skills to do this digital stuff I don't have the skills. How do we enable them to do that? So when you think of strategy, which is technical, think of the people component and how are they going to help us drive that forward. Current state, transition point, future state. This is why it's important for understanding workforce dynamics and embedding that into future of the organization. This is why that's important. And this is why I was glad to be invited, because I try and get to every audience, because I need you to understand the components of people, because you're high level in what you're talking through. But this is your DNA. Do I have the DNA for a future? Do I have the DNA for a totally different digital approach from the old marketing approach? What is the DNA of my workforce? What is the DNA of your team that's going to enable you to drive the strategy? All this has to come into play. So here's kind of a experience side. People apply for jobs. We go through higher onboarding. This is kind of the employee experience. This is being looked at a lot from strategic human resources, because the higher my score is from the employee experience, the better I'm going to get people engaged to what we do. And I tell HR people, I said, we need to understand all of this, because we're play a role in enabling the organization to drive to the other side. And this is why that's important. It's called the brand of you understand branding. What's the brand of your company? Would a digital marketing expert want to come work for you as your brand? Maybe not. Are we creating the brand as, that company, they're so far behind? When you think of from to, think of the two and think of how we would be positioned getting across the bridge. This is way behind. Who's number one? Who's number two? Who are the competitors competing against the same product line? We have to understand all of that. So it's not just about the discipline of what you do, because there's a lot of other pieces that goes through that. So when you think of talent management page, I think this is my last slide here. I have to do the from to for my side. I have to understand everything you're talking about here, and I have to look to see how am I going to enable you to get to the other side. And then I understand what the gap is, and we work together to close the gap. The only way that it's going to happen is that it has to be a unified kind of approach. And I know you have all the digital skills to do all these things. I heard some of the presentations when I came in on the content, all of this stuff. I don't understand every nuance of it, but I do understand that you need skills and capabilities to get to the so-called promised land, if we could say that. So how do you get your organization in shape? I love this slide here. We're trying to get in better shape, which means building out an enhanced digital approach, which means building out an enhanced people strategy to make all this happen. And we go from here to being fit like the top portion of this is. And with that, I say, make your organizations fit for the future, and I thank you for the time. Thank you.
Do we have any questions for Ron? Yes. Okay, all right.
First of all, thank you so much, Mr. Thomas, for your...
It's Ron. It's Ron. My father's Mr. Thomas. Go ahead.
Okay, that's great.
Branding.
All right. So I want to ask you for the very important question regarding TikTok, as you said earlier. Can be TikTok the future of digital marketing in future?
Well, my reference to TikTok was based on talent. And I did a workshop with a group out of Singapore today, very well-known brand. And one of the discussions came up was about TikTok. And the senior leadership doesn't want to go to TikTok. We don't need to be on TikTok. We need to be LinkedIn or whatever it is. Dude, where's your talent coming from? Your talent may not even be on LinkedIn. Your talent may not have a strong presence of it. So I'm looking at TikTok through a different perspective. If the customers you're trying to reach are on TikTok, you need to figure out how do you get on TikTok. And what a lot of companies are doing, so maybe I'm not a branding expert on TikTok, but maybe I have influencers, new phrase, inside of my organization who are TikTok kind of influencers. What a lot of companies are doing, they're bringing the TikTok people in, influencers inside their organization, and help us design a strategy behind it. You have all these skills from this younger set. Why not engage them if you're trying to build out a marketing strategy and maybe TikTok as an approach? If you have influencers inside your organization, tap them. Instagram, whatever it is. So I just use that kind of as an analogy because I get so much pushback from the people upstairs.
That's great.
We don't do TikTok. We would never do TikTok. Well, the people you're looking for is on TikTok. The talent you're looking for is on TikTok. Get over yourself, big shot.
That's great. Okay, one more question if you don't mind. Okay, seems you said the leadership should be competent and should be like with a positive mind.
Yeah.
I want to ask
That's
you...
a big ask.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I want to ask you, learning from the books is great or learning from the site experience is great?
Was that the question? Learning from the books, in other words, reading and all those kind of things? You know what I do for learning? Is that I follow CONFEX. I follow Gartner. I follow these sites because they have the money to spend a lot of money on research and the topics. If you go there and fill out a profile, if you did digital marketing, they will send you research that they've done on digital marketing. Books were written last year, and they're still out there now. I'm not using that as a negative, but if I went up to date, CONFEX did a research 2 weeks ago on digital marketing, on the concept of digital marketing. That's more relevant to me and from my side. So for me, I would look at it through that lens. Here's another point. Who are the influencers in your field? So let's do a functional audit. How many influencers, who's seen as the number one influencer, whatever it is? Are you connected to that person? If you were to send that person a note and said, I came across an idea, I want to share it with you. Can we jump on a call? And you know how many times we get these jump on a call. I just delete. You don't even know me. But if I built a relationship, oh, I love the presentation. I read the paper that you wrote. Here are the 3 key points that I really loved about that. And then I don't ask for anything. But if you build a relationship, I said, oh, Ron, yeah. Say, I got time. Jump on my calendar. Build a relationship first, and then you come back and tap into that. Okay.
All right, can we have a big round of applause for Ron Thomas for delivering a wonderful motivational session. And I'm sure we have equipped all the efforts that has to be taken in consideration being an entrepreneur.
I would like to invite Mitali to give certificate of participation and some goodies to Ron Thomas for this exceptional motivational session.